Hello, and welcome to tonight's virtual Commonwealth Club of California program. My name is Lauren Sanders, and I am happy to be moderating today's program. I've got here my dictionary, I've got my Google, I got my water, I got my blotting cloth in case we all break out into a sweat based on what Dr. Dyson will be sharing with us. My absolute pleasure to introduce to you this evening Dr., Professor, and Minister Michael Eric Dyson, Distinguished University Professor, I should say, of African American and Diaspora Studies, College of Arts and Science, and of Ethics and Society, Divinity School, and NEH Centennial Chair at Vanderbilt University, and author for the 24th time with his Entertaining Race, Performing Blackness in America. For more than 30 years, Dr. Dyson has played a prominent role in the nation as a public intellectual, university professor, cultural critic, social activist, and ordained Baptist minister. Now, this latest installation, Entertaining Race, Performing Blackness in America, he dives into how Black people were forced to entertain white people during enslavement, have been forced to entertain the idea of race from the start, and must find entertaining ways to make race an object of national conversation. We'll be discussing a lot in this next hour, and I want to ask Dr. Dyson's questions. I want to put questions to him from you. So if you are watching along with us, please put your questions in the text chat on YouTube, and we'll be getting to those questions for you later in the program. It is thrilling to be here with you, talking with you, Dr. Dyson. There's a real appreciation really from my heart for your written and oral record of the Black experience and for your efforts to really quantify and capture the experiences, thoughts, viewpoints, hearts of Black people for the purpose of moving us closer to justice and equality. Hats off to you, Detroit style. I just got to start it out with Detroit.
well, I'm so happy, Ms. Sanders. She's being very modest. She's one of the most remarkable broadcast professionals and media professionals, and even more broader than that, is an entrepreneur and an engaged citizen. So I'm deeply and profoundly grateful to you for taking the time out of your incredibly busy schedule. Plus, you're a mama of 3 wonderful boys, I believe that's right. And you are doing an extraordinary job. So we are so honored and grateful to have you here tonight.
Well, the connection is here, and I'm so pleased. So let's just start things off because people will likely be logging on and viewing from all around. Let's just lay just a little bit of groundwork about you and your inspiration for this body, really, this life's work of written as well as oratorical work that you've laid before our feet and in our echo speakers. Everybody who's saying, Alexa, play the next page.
You're entertaining as we talk about entertaining. Yeah, well, you know, I have been obsessed with trying to be as clear as possible about the conditions and circumstances that people of color face, Black people in particular, face in this country, and what the barriers and obstacles are that prevent our flourishing, and what roads and paths we can pursue in order to realize our noble ambitions, to not only realize our progress as a people, but to make this country a better place at the same time.
Indeed, indeed. And you have been compared to Jay-Z, LeBron, Tom Brady out in the pocket doing his thing. To sustain really a high level of outstanding output while being quite active outside of your field of academic play. You're an activist, a media personality, commentator, preacher, writer extraordinaire. Never mind that you are, of course, counsel. I can imagine to so many people that your phone is blowing up at all times. A husband, a father, and a friend to so many. And I know those frequent flyer miles are off the chain. First of all, does a brother sleep? And what is your central driving force, though, the central factor? Because most people who are this passionate and can perform on this level, they have a why, you know. So what is your why?
That's so powerful. Thank you for your kind words, by the way. Yeah, you know, when I got a PhD, I had already been a teen father, hustled on the streets, lived in Detroit on welfare, worked at my father's alma mater, the Kelsey Hayes Wheel Brake and Drum Company, and did a bunch of odd jobs. So by the time I went to college at 21, I knew I was serious about getting my education. And when I went to graduate school, I didn't go to graduate school to impress some other people and to impress other scholars, like as some of us may do, or to write primarily for them. I wanted to write for the people, to raise high the bloodstained banner of truth and the quest for democracy and justice for our people. And so I was clear on that. So what drives me is the desire to bear witness as intelligently and as sharply and as insightfully as I can to the powerful resources that our ancestors have bequeathed us, but also to create new ways of imagining and reimagining social justice for us in the 21st century. So I wanted to use everything at my disposal, the written word, the spoken word, sermons, essays, book reviews, op-eds, commencement speeches, and protest speeches, lectures, all the stuff that's in this book, to focus on this magnificent obsession, which is how to appropriately and effectively bear witness to ideals and truths that I know will be sideswiped, will be marginalized, will be attacked and assaulted as they have been throughout my career. But nonetheless, knowing that people died, people sacrificed blood and body and sinew and flesh for the progress of our people, I can do nothing but give as much time and energy as possible to creating better ways of thinking and being, and of realizing our goals and our destiny in this country.
Okay. And you did all that plus write 500 more pages in this book, though it's kind of a compilation as well. Just given us a nice list of various ways that you express yourself and reduce things to writing and quantify. So, but let's go ahead and talk about, this is the 24th for those of you who are just meeting Dr. Dyson. This is book number 24, so you got some catching up to do. This book, Entertaining Race, Performing Blackness in America, like the skilled orator that you are. And I think, you were a rapper in another life because you got a rapper skill set, which clearly shines through. So I see that double entendre, clearly Black people as entertainers, which in and of itself comes with a mighty list of conflictual dynamics of pride and trepidation.
Right.
Black people as entertainment, as I want to say, managers of sorts, having to manage the notion and realities of race, the dynamic of race, which plays out very often as a burdensome, I like to say, duality, that role playing, the code switching that Black people are called to do, right? That's
right.
Got to kind of perform that. So
right.
How would you speak to the meaning of the title?
Yes, ma'am. No, that's brilliantly laid out by you. And, those double entendres, those triple entendres, heck, those quadruple entendres. And we have to constantly pivot among and between competing ways and centers of being, of energy, of reflection, of commitment, of, ideals and goals. We have to constantly reflect on what we're about and what we're trying to do. And we're constantly translating, who we are. Yes, performing at many levels. Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage and we're all players on it. Well, that's true too. But it also means that Blackness is constantly being performed. And not just by Beyonce and Jay-Z and Louis Armstrong and Ella Fitzgerald and the great Aretha Franklin. It's being performed by ordinary, everyday Black people in both the exceptional realm that I just named on stage, but also in life, in corporate America, at their jobs, in places and spaces where they're asked about their hair or their clothing or their choice of vocation and or mates. So there's a constant, relentless interrogation of Blackness being executed, prosecuted by ordinary citizens and by the powers that be. And so we are constantly giving account of ourselves in the performative character. And I know for young people, performative means something like you fake it, like performative allyship. You're just presenting in public a performance of something that you deny the legitimacy of. But see, I think performance has a much more profound impact, and we perform in edifying and uplifting ways, not just in fake and in authentic ways. Martin Luther King Jr. was performing when he found a way to bring the barbarism of Bull Connor, the commissioner of public safety, the sheriff in Birmingham, to the stage that King would construct of social activism and resistance. So when he unleashed, that is he being Bull Connor, the fire hoses and the police dogs upon the flesh of Black men and women and children, the bicuspids and incisors of police dogs ripping into their flesh or nipping at them, or the water hoses washing them against the wall. Martin Luther King Jr. Was really recruiting Bull Connor to participate in a pageantry of Black social redemption by forcing America during its dinner time, while it's watching the evening news, looking at Walter Cronkite to see what's on the concrete, and it's Black bodies and faces and places and children being manhandled and mistreated. That was a performance of sorts. When John Lewis is on the bridge trying to get to the other side, trying to get across that Edmund Pettus Bridge and to argue for Black voting, that is performance. Ella Baker, Joanne Robinson, Fannie Lou Hamer, Septima Clark, Diane Nash, and on and on and on. So I think that performance has a redemptive character within Black America, and not just in the famous people and the exceptional people, but the ordinary, everyday people. Black Lives Matter is a performance. Naomi Osaka is performing on the tennis court, but when she refuses to perform in deference to her own mental health, that's a greater performance of Black self-care in an era when Black people are demanded to perform. And going back to the time when that slave girl that I began the book with was hung upside down by her one ankle with a lawn cloth barely covering her midriff, beat to death at 15 because she refused to perform. That's the struggle we've been having from the very beginning, and Black people are constantly, relentlessly negotiating that demand with the performance of our profound intelligence and humanity.
Right. It made me think right away when I read the title, and just you always want to thread this through your personal experience. And Coney Gardens here in Detroit is a historically very stable working class Black neighborhood. And I have my own concept of entertaining reflections. It seems that entertainment, though, and I want your reflection, holds its value, as you say, it can be redemptive when we own it. When we own it, okay, when we dance for our own selves, not under the exploitive, uninitiated eye of others. So it's dance, but it's a different effect, right?
That's right. That's right.
Mine, for me, a clear directive. I can remember my mother and grandmother standing on the porch, looking out the door, saying, "Hey, we don't dance outside on the street like that," because it's inevitable when the girlfriends got together. We kickball, we do hide and seek, but eventually we're gonna try to do a dance. Who knows how to do the new breakdown? And my grandmother and my mother would always say, no, we don't dance. Later, I would understand was because that might be showing that we were uncouth in some way. And there was a dynamic of not dancing also when others outside of our race were present.
Mm-hmm.
Dance when other people can see you and they're not from your community.
That's right.
As if you're the entertainment.
Right.
Family wants more for you. So hey, my mother would say, we don't dance now. So let us know right away. So I'm just wondering your reflections. Does that fit into the sphere? Because at some point, though, it must be that this performance is something that is self-actualizing for ourselves or beneficial in some way.
Right. No, you're so brilliant. So brilliant. This is why we wanted the great Ms. Lauren Sanders on here tonight. You've deconstructed that brilliantly, because the competing forces are the internal drive and compulsion to be creative in the midst of horror and tragedy and trauma and terror, to create stable rituals of sustenance, ways in which Black people can maintain and preserve a sense of progress, of stability, of the capacity to endure the traumas that are imposed upon us arbitrarily, but also our will to act as agents of our destiny in a society that refuses to acknowledge our humanity. So we got that, so that every performance is not merely reactionary against the demand or in response to the demand of white supremacy for you Negroes to dance, as they did on enslaved ships, dance the captives, because they danced the captives to keep them in shape, to keep them active, to entertain and titillate the non-Black men, mostly on board, and to make sure that their property was not going to waste.
Right.
But on the other hand, you know, so we wanted to create our own dimensions, even before we were enslaved. In African civilizations and native haunts, we were dancing for a variety of reasons. We were singing for a variety of reasons. We didn't have to worry about responding to European colonization or the fetishization of dark skin as the projection of sexual desire of the other for Black bodies. But your grandmama understood. No, we ain't gonna be out here performing no blackface and no minstrel and putting on no performance that white folk think that's all that Negroes do. No, we're not gonna have that. Now, we know that there's a tremendously fertile debate in Black communities about the politics of respectability. So we shouldn't be obsessed with what white folk think of us. If we have the freedom to exercise agency, we should be able to dance and sing and do what we want, fine. But the truth is that we're being judged, we're being seen through a prism that is a distorted prism. And at the same time, here we are engaged in practices that are being narrowly, you know, construed by the dominant culture, and sing us a song, dance for us, perform for us, Negroes, in response to, you know, what has genetically been encoded in the collective unconscious of white folk. And some Black folk like your grandma, we ain't down with that. We ain't trying to give no free performances. They ain't paying no money. And we're not trying to fulfill a stereotype of the natural capacity of the Negro, because that dishonors the hard work that we have to do. That would be like saying, you know, Lauren Sanders is one of the greatest journalists and media specialists we have. Look at how crisp and articulate her words are. She's got that, but she had to practice. She had to study. She had to be smooth. She had to learn how to read a teleprompter. She had to learn how to improvise. That's some hard work up in there. And the ethics of journalism and deconstructing mythologies of objectivity and neutrality. That's hard work. So don't dishonor Black performance by saying every Negro can dance, because for every Black person that can, we know 20 that can't. Right? And for everyone that can do sports, we know 50 who can't. So let's not deny the legitimacy of our genius and what we manifest on fields of play or on stages of performance by suggesting that, oh, that's such a natural thing that Black people do. No, it ain't. Now, we got good at what we were demanded to do. Hortense Spillers, the great feminist critic, says, and cultural critic, look, that's what the reason they didn't ask us to parse the language of modernist poetry. They didn't ask us to deconstruct Nietzsche. They asked us to dance and perform and do physical stuff with our bodies. So we got good at what the demands were because we're trying to survive. So it was out of that culture, plus whatever, quote, natural instincts we had toward performativity to account for the practices of Black folk at any particular moment, culturally and artistically.
Well, let's talk again about some more specifics here, because I tell you one thing that really struck me was the depth and breadth and the scope. I mean, this book, folks who are watching, listening, this book will take you on an enjoyable, like analytical journey, like a snapshot of so many parts of America and with the Black folks in it. It's truly remarkable in the range of topics that you take on. Music, I mean, if I go through this list, music, photography, plays, films, religious essays, sermons, eulogies, you talk about basketball, politics, cultural criticism, lectures, speeches, dialogues, debates, public addresses, protest speeches, op-eds, commencement addresses, and so much more. I mean, that right there is to have that range and to be able to speak with a level of depth and analytical thought. So from what would you say you derive your ability really to shape critical analysis really on such a wide range? Specifically in this book, you go from King to Kobe, beyond Joey Baraka, from August Wilson to George Floyd. I mean, like I said earlier, do you sleep?
Bless you for that. And thank you for reading so thoroughly and understanding the scope, the design, the progress of thought, the evolution of consciousness that hopefully is betokened in this book. Because look, I'm old school Black intellectual. I'm old school intellectual. I'm old school American scholar. I'm interested in a set of questions, and they take me across a number of axes, of genres, of fields of study. Anthropology, ethnography is a subsection. Sociology of knowledge, metaphysics, philosophical thought, and so on. So I'm just trying to figure out questions. What's true? What's fact? What's real? What's possible? What can we do? How can we engage? What do we talk about when we talk about Blackness? What is American democracy? So I have to study political theory. I give commencement addresses. I give lectures. I give orations. I give protest speeches. I study widely and broadly scientific discourse, the rigors of the social sciences, and so on and so forth, because I am curious about the way the world operates and trying to figure out how we continue to negotiate and engage our ideas as human beings, and how we apply that to the worlds in which we live. So yeah, I'm interested in Kobe. I'm interested in Barack. I'm interested in basketball. I'm interested in football, sport. I'm interested in a whole range of ideas that constitute the performance field of Blackness, and as broad a variety of insight as can be marshaled in order to understand this undeniably complex phenomenon we call Blackness.
Okay. Well, I think that when we have such an expert as yourself here, we should take the opportunity to tap into your depth, your reservoir of information, and popular hot topic right now circulating.
Right.
And race and entertaining race is certainly a polarizing topic right away, but we need look no further than the well-crafted alarm bells that are being set off about critical race theory.
Right.
Including this keynote address you gave at Howard University's Law School on critical race theory way before it was popular, way before talk about openly, way before it was controversial. And it looks like this will be gaining steam as a topic that will be building in momentum on the campaign trail. A hot button issue. It is worth talking about right here. So first, let us define for everyone who has no real concept, or they are getting their concepts from fly-by-night, television shows and sound bites. Let's talk about define critical race theory. Just help us understand, and how is it being misinterpreted?
Yes, ma'am. Well, no, it's a great point you're making. There were some Jewish intellectuals in Germany, part of the Frankfurt, Germany school, Frankfurt School, right? They came to be known as the Frankfurt School, like University of Chicago, sociologist Robert Park and others, the Chicago School, because it was at the University of Chicago in the city of Chicago. Frankfurt in Frankfurt, Germany, at the Frankfurt Institute. So the Frankfurt School. And they had people like Max Horkheimer, Herbert Marcuse. Marcuse and others immigrated from Germany to America and other places because they were trying to avoid Hitler's Germany, the rise of fascism and anti-Semitism. Many of these scholars, these Jewish scholars, went to teach at historically Black colleges and universities. And isn't it interesting? And other universities where Black students had access to them. Herbert Marcuse was the professor at, I think it was University of California, San Diego, or one of those institutions in California, of Angela Davis. So Frankfurt School, Herbert Marcuse, Angela Davis, Frankfurt School, critical theory. And as Max Horkheimer said, the word critical and critical theory means coming up with a theory that could deal with a critical analysis. What do you mean by critical? Studying those things that enslave us and therefore liberating us from the impediments that enslave us. That's what he meant by critical. Who's against that? Who's against trying to figure out the elements that enslave us and how we can be emancipated from them? So from critical theory came critical legal studies, and from that, critical race theory. Because the Black scholar said, let's put a little spin on this. It's good you're dealing with the ways in which jurisprudence and the rationality of the courts is operating and legal theory, but let's apply this to Black theories and reflections on legal theory and truths. So critical race theory is something for law schools. That's where they founded it. That's where they generated it. Kimberly Crenshaw, Derek Bell, Charles Lawrence, Marie Matsuda, and all this in the 70s and 80s. And so it was a legal theory about how we got to deal with not only individuals, but institutions. Not only sentiments and passions, I hate you, you're Black, I don't like you, but also structures and systems. So that even when you got nice people, like, I like you Black people, but the inequity of a school system is self-perpetuating. It doesn't demand an individual bigot to perpetuate a legacy of inequity because of the structural inequalities that prevail. So that's what critical race theory is trying to do, is like, let's figure out ways in which we can talk about these big problems, these big obstacles, these big structures that are almost damn near self-perpetuating. Now, how we go from that to what we mean by critical race theory today, because a young white boy named Christopher Rufo was studying all this anti-racist literature, not for purposes of informing himself, but by looking at how he could attack it. And he found that many of them were referring to critical race theory in their anti-racist literature. It's not that they were bound by that or united by that or even unified by that. So he said, this is going to be a good thing to galvanize the right wing and to spook white parents to believe that their children are being taught to hate them or hate themselves and the like. So to end all this by saying, the critical race theory is a way of understanding legally how society is not simply motivated by individual bigots, but by institutional and structural forces that have to be grappled with. And this notion that critical race theory is going to destroy white kids and is being taught in high school, it ain't being taught in all law schools. Darn sure not in high school. So let's stop the madness and get to the truth of what's going on. Right wingers and conservative elements, far right elements in this country want to use any race baiting philosophy or theory in order to scare white people into believing that the real enemy is critical race theory and not straight up white supremacy.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. That was very thorough. And I did, in reading your book, get that understanding. And Derek Bell, I was first exposed to that Harvard law professor when I was at University of Michigan. But the concept of reduced to moms who are coming out saying that we are opposed to separation of children for the demonstration, something having to do with critical race theory. But in fact, I just had to apply common sense and say, if we're teaching a theory, is
right.
teachers misstep in that they have decided to adopt a misguided approach? I mean, did somebody give you a template of material and say, way that we teach it, or was that you with a harebrained approach that's causing the trauma? And though the concept of trauma, because I've seen, and everyone else probably, and you're hearing what the objections are, is that the white children are being made to feel guilty and that this is traumatizing. But what I'm hearing is it could be an opportunity for development of empathy and understanding. So in fact, maybe when you are forced into some emotional reaction, maybe we're building a new generation of people who care. But
right. How about that? How about that? As opposed to forcing kids to feel bad about themselves or guilt. We ain't interested in guilt. We ain't interested in bad feeling. We're interested in the performance of a humanity. If young Black kids are not too young to be victims of racism, young white kids ain't too young to know what it is.
Yes, and if we're teaching facts, we're not teaching, we're teaching let's just tell.
Right. How about that? Are you too young for the Supreme Court? How about the Constitution? How about the Declaration of Independence? How about civics? My God, but you ain't too young for the Confederate. You ain't too young for that, huh? Come on, man. Come
Okay.
on, like they say on Monday Night Football. Come on, man.
Okay, so let's go to I can tell one of your favorite topics, and that's because that's that Detroit roots, the soul, the music. Okay, let's talk
Ah,
Jay-Z. Let's
Jay,
talk
Jigga. Mhm.
It's a hard knock life. Don't make me sing.
Ah, look at you dropping it over there. Yes, ma'am.
LL Cool J. They obviously, this is really exciting for them. They were just inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Two very
Mm-hmm.
artists, of course. But I know you played a special role. You were invited to be involved during Jay-Z's induction. And so it made me think, I know that there's a thought and a principle in the Black community of not looking for affirmation outside of our own. But
Right.
I'm wondering how you feel that our Black history in entertainment really comes to bear on this moment.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. It's a great distinction you make. And it is, look, we have to be careful. Of course, we don't want to depend upon white validation as a means of Black self-expression. That's true. But everybody like to be liking, people like what you're doing. And as Dr. King said, vitamin A to the ego. So, everybody want to be loved and said it's good and you're doing all right. But we don't want to be victims of obsessively and slavishly being obsequious and deferring to people just out of desperate desires to want to be liked. So no, of course. But it is important to, have people understand what you're trying to do. And the interesting thing about hip hop is that unlike earlier generations that said, well, we're going to cross over to the dominant mainstream and, make them understand our humanity. That was good. Hip hop was like, look, we ain't going nowhere. Look, this is what we do. This is how we be talking. This is what we be saying. If you dig it, come on over. Oh, guess what? Your kids love it. They love what we doing, So LL Cool J and Jay-Z being inducted into the Hall of Fame is beautiful. And I like that duality because, LL doesn't often get the kind of recognition he deserves because he ain't cussing a whole bunch. And he's talking about loving the ladies. I need love. He made the first hip hop love song. Don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years, rocking my pen. He's the dude battle rap, around the way girl, showing love to the ladies, sex symbol up in hip hop. Then you got Jay-Z speaking about the hustling life. God forgive me for my brash delivery, but I remember vividly what these streets did to me. Imagine me allowing you to nitpick at me, portray me like a pickaninny, condensing the word pickaninny. Or all my teachers couldn't reach me and my mama couldn't beat me hard enough to match the pain of my pop not seeing me. So with that disdain in my membrane, got him a pimp game, blank the world, my defense came. So, you got a guy, look, I would write it if y'all could get it, but being intricate will get your wood critic on the internet. They're like, you should spit it. I'm like, you should buy it. That's good business. So the thing is that rhetorical ferocity, the mastery, the fluidity, the poetic invention of a Jay-Z or of a LL Cool J is certainly to be celebrated. And let us note, although you're a young lady, I'm older than you by far, that when I was coming up, not as a young man, but as a younger man in my 20s, and I'm listening to the R&B station, we played no heavy backbeat. They were promoting the fact. In other words, we ain't playing that hippity hop stuff because as we were developing, a lot of Black people were ashamed, turned off by, didn't want to hear hip hop. Now, some of that had to do with the sexism and misogyny, but even before then, right? They were like, turn that trash off. That ain't real music and so on. And now here we are, hip hop is the most successful music, the most popular music in the world, having surpassed a couple of years ago, country music. Now, that's saying a lot, but anyway.
Is saying a lot, and I think some of that is because of its authenticity. That would be a word I would kind of reduce things to.
Right.
And I just want to share that it seems to me, as I listen deeply to your analysis about the artists and then their craft, The treatment of music and the artist that created what you speak about in the book is like you've laid out to provide this necessary perspective as
Mm.
a manual of sorts on how these artists and their craft ought to be viewed, considering
Right.
they and their crafts are often relegated to the B minus pile because
Mm.
craft is often not born out of, let's just call it convention. So
Right.
seem to me like useful information for people who don't know or they don't have an appreciation for already these artists almost by default. So it's like you're helping them to quantify and define for the onlookers exactly what they are on looking.
What they looking on, what they looking on. That's right. That's a great point.
To me of the great phenomenon of the early lack of respect for improvisation in jazz.
Mm.
In fact, jazz improvisation is knowing the rules so well that you can break the rules. So, but in the beginning, that was seen as that's the junkyard music. No one's respecting that because you're not, keystroking it out exactly the way someone else has written. You making up your
Right.
own line. And so it reminded me of you helping others to understand this is the position that this music holds. If you don't know it, now you know.
If you don't know, now you know. That's so brilliantly articulated. The parallels between improvisation, and how it was seen as somehow departing from the canons of European music. Thomas Jefferson is writing in notes on Virginia. Negroes have some, creativity in the music, but, I doubt whether they'll be able to develop harmonically. Ha! Guess you didn't hear the Supremes, did you, homeboy? So the thing is that they were skeptical about the moral utility and the rationality that informed the artistic expressions of Black people, and therefore thought we were crude and reductionistic and animalistic and savage. And as you said, the improvisation was seen as a radical departure from the written notes, and therefore you must be inferior and ignorant because you can't read them. Well, some people weren't taught to read because you kept us from reading both the words in the book and notes. So we did something ingenious. We came up with our own. When you go into the studio with Miles Davis and John Coltrane, 1959, Cannonball Adderley, who was on the piano? Was it Bill Evans? And who's on the drums? Philly Joe Jones or somebody on the drums, McCoy Tyner on the piano too. And then they got chords sketched out. They know where they're gonna go, but they don't know how they're gonna get there. They don't know what it's gonna sound like in the interim. So that's why they start da 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 da. All right, we got that down. But that's what on as the quote spirit moves them. And they begin to play around those notes and play around with those notes. So your point is brilliant in terms of the parallel between improvisation and what was going on in hip hop. And dig it. Louis Armstrong and the old school swing didn't dig bebop when bebop came along. Right. So that when Charlie Parker and them were coming along, right? So bebop itself was seen as, no, Louis Armstrong, I don't even really dig that. Leave that alone. I'm not feeling that. And then the younger cats, the younger Turks come along and they're ringing changes on the music. Charlie Parker, then later on, of course, Coltrane and the like. So each generation embodying its ethic of artistic expression and protocol. But as you said, they were seen as barbaric and savage by the dominant European culture and hip hop. Well, you ain't reading. Well, Homer could neither read nor write, but ain't nobody gonna call him illiterate. Ain't nobody gonna call the Iliad a work that's jacked up. Ain't nobody gonna call one of the great works of oral artistry in the Western world the mark of savage sensibility or inferior intelligence. So Jay-Z doesn't even write it down, not even writing it down, Bin Laden been happening in Manhattan. Back then the police was Al-Qaeda to black men. What? Tupac, somebody wake me, I'm dreaming. I started as a seed, the semen, swimming upstream, planted in the womb while screaming. On the top was my pops. My mama hollering, stop from a single drop. This is what they got. Not to disrespect my people, but my papa was a loser. Only plan he had for mama was to blanker and abuser. And even as a seed, I could see his plan for me stranded on welfare, another broken family. I mean, think about Rakim standing by the speaker. Suddenly I heard it, had a fever. Was it me or either? Summer madness. Because I just can't stand around. So I get closer, and the closer I get, the better it sounds. My mind starts to activate. Rhymes collaborate. Because when I heard the beat, I just had to make something from the top of my head. So I fell into the groove of the wax and I said, how can I move the crowd first of all? Ain't no mistakes allowed. So yeah, our kids are genius on genius with improvisation and generating the beauty of the freestyle into an art form that has taken the world by storm.
Amazing. And while all of that genius exists, we still find the naysayer. So I'm going to go to a naysayer. We don't want to run out of time, and we will be fielding questions from some.
Oh, right. Okay. Right.
But I wanted to see if we have enough time to get to this interesting exchange that you had. Now, it happened some years ago, but people are really buzzing about this. And it is really true, the dialogue and words, and which is why we're here. And Commonwealth Club is doing a great thing in just share of information. Words can help to elevate us. We know words help to define us. It can help to change behavior. So the Monk debates in Canada found you on stage on a verbal throwdown with Canadian psychologist Jordan Peterson. During this debate, Peterson made some pretty emotionally tinged comments. One about how would we tax him for his white privilege, which I heard as if to say, if there's a difficulty in quantifying white advantage and a difficulty in quantifying Black disadvantage, then somehow that nullifies the harm.
Right.
On it, then it must not exist. It was some dynamics going on between the two of you, and I wondered if you could give us your take.
Yes, ma'am. You should, it's like you were a fly on the wall and right there. And I was like, yo, bro, right. As you brilliantly put it, just because you can't quantify it in your own calculus, in your own physiognomy of ferocity, that we can't somehow measure the trauma in terms of decibels and in terms of algorithms, then somehow the harm ain't real. Well, you might not could say, you might have a disease you don't know the origin of. It's as they say in medical practice, an unknown etiology. So scientifically, you don't have the descriptive power to name that thing which can destroy you, but it can still kill you. Just because you ain't got no word for it, just because you don't know what it is, don't mean it can't kill you. And so, yeah, of course, that's, as the great philosopher Mike Tyson would say, ludicrous. It's ludicrous, right, to say that. And then we got into a debate. This dude was talking about, I find a lot of these right wingers and these conservative ideologues, and he claims he's neither, but clearly his theories benefit the conservatives and the arch right wing and the reactionaries. They're using words like it's postmodern, by which he meant, I assume, that we have no, anchor in truth, a truth that is unyielding, a truth that is true for all time. That true today, true tomorrow, like you God. You ain't God, homie. So stuff gonna change. And but I teach postmodernity. I was asked, what you talking about? Are you talking about Jacques Derrida with his notion of deconstruction? Are you speaking about Michel Foucault with what he called the insurrection of subjugated knowledges? What are you talking about? Baudrillard with the simulacrum that is generated in a postmodern context? Are you talking about postmodernity as a time period or postmodernity as a thematic preoccupation? Are you talking about destabilizing modernist narratives at the behest of an exploding corpus of ideas and beliefs? What you be meaning, homie? So if you ain't got no clear definition of that and you just tossing these words around without defining them, it sounds kind of cray-cray to me. And so at one point I did call him a mean, mad white man. Because I'm like, what's the anger? It's like you like the mad rapper. Tell him why you mad, son. Tell him why you mad. So those things are part and parcel of what was going on there. And it was a heck of a debate, and some interesting fireworks and dialogue were occurring.
And it's really difficult when it feels as if you have to convince others of what should be, you would hope to be super obvious when you look at basic facts and statistics. And I think, fundamentally the concept of moving us toward the ideals that we have espoused,
Right.
definition of who we are as Americans. Clearly, we've run afoul of some of that. And
Right.
difficult to listen to those who seem to still need to be convinced. But if they need numbers, we're going to get the number crunchers for you.
Right, right. No, you're right. I mean, and
We have a few questions, Dr. Dyson. And
okay, I just want to say, like when the Bible says those who come to God must believe God is, because if you already all, don't believe, then you're not going to have a certain predisposition to actually believe. Now, those who are agnostic or atheists have a right to say that's bull crap, I don't believe that, but at least understand that you got to invest in the process of belief itself in order for it to become meaningful. But anyway, let's tackle some of those questions, man.
some of those, some of that analysis that you went through, that was a chapter that I would tell you, ladies and gentlemen, be ready. And some other things, that whole chapter.
Thank you. You read it tight now. You read it tight. I appreciate it.
I mean, my head was on fire.
I appreciate it.
Some of the questions that we have here. For our first question, how can we tell the difference, they ask, between profound, performative, against detrimental types of performativity?
That's a great question. I don't think we can necessarily always know it in advance. Sometimes you can, if people just faking the funk. I had no real interest in this, but shoot, this was hip right now. Everybody's posting on Instagram. Let me go and post on Instagram too. All right. But a lot of people posting on Instagram could have been real, could have been serious about it. We don't know. So it could be performativity, but also deeply rooted in traditions of honest response to problems. So they could be both. They could understand the performative character of allyship, because we do need symbols and, representations of what we're aiming for. And so there could be some ham involved, some performativity. When Dr. King is delivering the I Have a Dream speech, you don't think that's performance? He could have said 50 years ago, great American whose symbolic shadow we stand today, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. What did he say? 50 years ago, well, great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today, signed. He drug it out like a melisma, like Sam Cooke yodeling. Whoa, 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 whoa. So he struck it out, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. You don't think Malcolm X was performing? Look at him. You've been hoodwinked. You've been bamboozled, right? That's performance at its height. Preachers, speakers, thinkers, dramatizing events. Martin Luther King Jr. dramatized. He said, we must dramatize the inequities that prevail. So yes, sometimes we can tell by the consequence what the real is from the fake. Sometimes we can tell by the intent originally, and sometimes they're mixed up, because sometimes you start with one direction and end up in another. You might see, if you happen to be a heterosexual male and you see a beautiful woman going to church, you follow her to church. Then you get there and find out, oh, Jesus there too? Oh, dang, what a bonus. What a bonus. What a bonus. So don't hold that against me, y'all. So the thing is that there are multiple reasons to motivate a human being, but multiple outcomes as well.
Okay. And we have another question that has come in, which asks, which academic disciplines outside of your specializations have been the most influential towards uncovering new insights that might lead, say, to a new book idea?
That's a great question. So, probably literary theory, social theory, anthropological stuff, especially,
Epigenetic.
doing a kind of ethnography. What did you say? I'm sorry, what did you say?
Epigenetics, something.
Yeah, epigenetics, extremely important, and understand the transmission of trauma over space and time. So I'm an amateur on all these things, trying to learn something, trying to figure it out, but trying to use vocabularies, grammars, and insight to try to understand what's going on. So those are some of those. And pop culture and cultural theories and studies are extremely important as well.
Okay. I think we have time for one or two more questions.
Okay.
Has has come in. What story or person did not make it into the book that you really wanted to include?
Ha! That's a great question, actually. I had to cut like 5 chapters, man. I had to cut a couple sermons. I was like, man, I had to cut a couple sermons, couple interviews that I was doing. I ain't gonna tell you what they are, so they're gonna show up in a new book. They're gonna show up in a future book. So yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, about 5 chapters that I had, and that's just from what the final list was. Before then, I had about 80 chapters. Had to cut it down to 75. Then to 70. How many made it now? I don't know. Is it 50, 60, 50, 50 chapters now? So yeah, I did some cutting now. That's a great question. And hopefully they'll be useful to me in future projects.
Okay, very good. We know you have a building and growing archive. So we expect that more will be coming your way. The next question, what is your opinion on HBO's show Insecure, Issa Rae, using AKA or Alpha Kappa Alpha to promote an image of their character and turning a very real experience into something that can be adopted by a character to entertain? You know, that was kind of buzzing around as
Right.
that was controversial.
Yeah, I know I'm going to be politically incorrect, and the AKA is probably going to be mad at me, and the Deltas, but they be throwing up them gang signs. Here's to the rock. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just joking, y'all. I'm just joking. Look, are we taking it that seriously that we can't even have it as an artifact of consciousness by a Black female creator, educating the world, entertaining the world, elucidating and illuminating the cultural context of Black people? Look at Spike Lee, who did School Days. He had the jigaboos and the wannabes. My God, the whole film was built around the rituals of Black public, historically Black colleges and universities. Now, Issa Rae doing a real one is even more realistic, is more provocative, makes people think about what they're doing when they join sororities or fraternities. So I think she's an amazing woman. I think she's very creative. And I think that was quite provocative and a necessary step to try to jog us out of a kind of proprietary regard for our own culture and to see it through the irreverence that would yield a kind of insight that we wouldn't gain if we're being so proper about it. And I think we need to be pushed ourselves every now and again in that regard.
We have another question. What are your thoughts about the NBA walkout that followed the shooting of Jacob Blake? Do you think it was effective?
Absolutely. I mean, people talking about it. I know some of the players were like, let's just not play at all. Dude, if you ain't playing, they ain't paying attention. You know what I'm saying? Michael Jordan, I'm gonna be interested in politics after I'm done. They don't care, bruh. When you ain't chucking that ball and throwing that rock and running that pigskin, they don't care as much. It ain't the same when you're at the height. This is why I got mad respect for LeBron James. While he is playing, he got mad respect for the game. He takes care of his body, 38 years old, 37, 38, whatever, he's about to turn 38, I think soon in December. All that, and at the same time, dropping mad science, clowning Kyle Rittenhouse for his crocodile tears, speaking up for Colin Kaepernick, talking about, I'm not just gonna dribble, shut up and dribble. Right now, Black Lives Matter, I Can't Breathe, raising consciousness, funneling money toward the funding of voter rights campaigns among African-American people, right while he is most popular. Mad love and respect to that brother right there. So I think it's extremely important. What they did was valuable and effective.
Okay. We have another question. What was your reaction to the defense attorney in the case against the murders of Ahmaud Arbery, saying that he did not want Black pastors in the courtroom? I'm sure you know of that. Do you think it speaks to the way white people view Reverend Al Sharpton, Reverend Jesse Jackson, and others?
It speaks of how they look at Black people, no matter if they got a reverend behind their name. You just another, man, don't make me say it. So look, these are respectable men, friends of mine, I got chapters on both of them in the book. So if you want to read about what I think about them, check out the book on Reverend Al Sharpton and on Reverend Jesse Jackson. They are iconic figures, historic, legendary, have done so much for Black people in this nation. And now you're going to tell them they can't come to the daggum courtroom? You just trying to tell us the very sight of a Black person? Why are you so fragile? You be talking about Black people as snowflakes. You talk about Black people as weak, as woke, as can't take nothing. And yet the moment something doesn't go your way, you just tripping out all over. And I'm talking about you. If it don't fit you, don't take it. I'm talking about the very narrow consideration of certain white folk who are hypersensitive about these issues and trying to make a literally federal case out of it. It's ludicrous, that argument. They are citizens of the United States of America. They have a right to be present and accounted for. And I hope not only 100 ministers show up on Thursday, I hope 1,000 show up. That's my tribe. That's my fraternity. The Black preachers. I've been doing it for over 40 years. So when you talk about them, you're talking about me. So show up, brothers and sisters. Let's show them what we do.
Well, I think we are just about out of time as we talked this evening. This has been a thrill for me. And I really want to thank you so much for joining the Commonwealth Club. This has just been fascinating. There's so much more we could talk about. I mean, we didn't even get to talk about, 6 Mile and Livernois.
Come on, man. White Castle, we ain't talking about, what's going on in the D. Yeah, so yes, ma'am. Next time. Thank you so much for your brilliance and insight and your radiance and your tremendous facilitation of this conversation and taking the time away from your busy schedule and your family to do this. Thank you so very kindly.
I thank you. I would love to do it again. And I want to thank you for joining the Commonwealth Club today and discussing a mere snippet of this fantastic new 24th book from Michael Eric Dyson. If you haven't read it, you will not be disappointed. You will be taken on a word roller coaster of depth and breadth. You will learn key nuances of the Black experience and critical viewpoints on and from the Black experience. We'd also like to thank you, of course, our audience members for watching and participating live. And thank you to our bookstore partner. That would be Marcus Books in Oakland. We encourage—
That's my people, Marcus Books. Right, go buy some books from them.
Come on, Oakland, I'm coming on out there. We encourage you, of course, to pick up your copy of Dr. Dyson's latest book. It is holiday gift giving time, and it will make a fantastic stocking stuffer, as they say. I would like, if you, of course, would like to watch more, and if you would like to support more of these online programs, because it's fascinating that you can be there and I can be here and you all can be there and we can come together for this information share. And if you would like to continue to support the Commonwealth Club's efforts in making virtual programming possible, please visit their website. It's commonwealthclub.org/online. I'm Lauren Sanders, and thank you so much for your time. This has been a thrill. Take care, and thank you. Good night.
Good night.